Alright, welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to the Alpha Battle League channel. I'm your host, Levitee, and welcome to the ABL Season 2 Playoff Predictions. Now, if you're a fan of the ABL, make sure you subscribe to this channel below, and make sure you like the like button too. But yeah, without further ado, let's get right into this video. Now, before we get into the predictions, we're just going to discuss which each team placed, what their seeding was. So starting off at the bottom seed, we had the Illinois Shedinja, the coach being Pikachu MC99. They finished with a record of 2-12. Not the best record though, but I don't think they really went into this season with high hopes or to finish very positive. Next up, we had the Lincolnshire Lugias finishing with 4-10. Now, they actually took over a team, the California Earthswings. They dropped out midseason, so the Lincolnshire Lugias came in midseason to pick up where the California Earthswings left off. And the Earthswings only had one win or none under their belt before they took over the team, but then the Lugias got a few wins while they were in the ABL, so they didn't totally go very bad. And then we had the Chicago Cubones finishing 5-9. We actually have a few teams that finished 5-9. Same deal with them. They came into the season later. They replaced the team as well, and they came in, got a few wins. So props to them for coming in and getting some few wins. And next up, we have the Nazareth Dawn fans, ex-Potato Master, also finishing 5-9. The Dolphins actually did not do that bad, in my opinion, throughout the season. They proceeded to go in beyond above what people predicted them to do. They did a lot better than people thought they would do. So props to ex-Potato Master for finishing as well as he did. And then we had the Houston Gallades finishing 5-9. They also came in later and took over a team. So props to him, like everyone else, for taking over a team and getting some wins under their belt, because the previous coaches did not have many wins, and then when the new coaches came in, they kind of took over and got a lot more wins than the previous coaches. And then we move on to the Richmond Raikus, who finished 6-8. Not a bad record, but not very good record either. They had more losses than wins, but they also had a very difficult draft, a very difficult team to work around, so for having the difficult team they didn't finish too bad, in my opinion. And then we move on to the Colorado Agrons. They finished 7-7, just a neutral team. They didn't finish positive or negative. The Agrons actually did a lot worse than most people thought, but they had a pretty difficult team to maneuver around as well. They had good Pokemon, but the synergy just wasn't there for his team, and his prepping also caused him to lose a lot of games, which is the reason why he finished 7-7. Then we have the Cincinnati Incineroars finishing 7-7 as well at the number 5 spot. That's around the spot I think people finished them or predicted them to finish, somewhere around there, the 6 or 5 spot. But Trevor and the Cincinnati Incineroars did do very well. The team, they're a very good team, just couldn't get as many wins as they had. And then we move on to the top 4 teams who did qualify for playoffs. And the first team we have the Manchester Gliscor finishing 9-5. This team was very dominant at the beginning of the season, but near the end, especially during their rematches, they started to lose a lot of games. Sly just said that he's not very good at rematches, and you can see that he lost the majority of his rematches, and that kind of caused his record to fall down a little bit, causing him to finish at the number 4 seed. And then we move on to the number 3rd spot. We have the Toronto Weebells finishing 10-4. Toronto Weebells, people probably predicting them to finish around there, maybe the 3rd or 4th spot, but they have a very good team, one of the most defensive teams in the league, very good defensive core. Then we move on to the Grenadian Slowkings. Nathan, last season's champion, they finished 11-3. I think people actually predicted them to finish a lot higher. They did get 3 loses this season. They only had 1 last season, so there's something. And then we move on to the number 1 team who seeded first, the Rowlets finishing 12-2. Very dominant team throughout the league. I think their only losses were to the Grenadian Slowkings and the Toronto Weebells. They beat everyone else, and it's going to be very interesting to see how this team does in playoffs. I'm very curious to see how they're going to do. Alright, so first off, we're just briefly going to discuss the playoffs, how I think will go, the score of the matches, what teams will play each other, and all that good stuff. So starting out, the first battles to happen, we have the Toronto Weebells versus the Grenadian Slowkings, first match in the qualifiers. This battle could go 2 ways. The Slokings can either mop the floor with the Weeballs, or the Weeballs will have a victory, but a very close one. This is the rivalry of the ABL. This is the favorite rivalry. The Slokings, the Weeballs. These were the final competitors last season. I would love to see them in the finals again, but I don't see it happening. But for this battle, it's, like I said, it's a toss-up. Either Weeballs will get destroyed or Weeballs will win. Very close battle, though. But if history does repeat itself, which I think it will, I think that the Weeballs will come up with a 1-0 victory over the Slokings. That's what I feel like could happen. But, like I said, if the Weeballs do not perform well, they're going to get mopped and destroyed by the Slokings. And if that's the case, I feel like the Slokings will come up with a 4-0 victory over the Weeballs. But, other than that, I do think the Weeballs will come up with a win here. With very close, though. I do think history will repeat itself. And then we move on to the second match of the qualifiers, the Rowlet Rowlets versus the Manchester Gliscor. When these two teams faced each other twice in the main season, the Rowlet Rowlets came with a victory both times. And I don't see why the Rowlet Rowlets couldn't come up with a victory the third time. Manchester Gliscor just have a very hard time dealing with Magearna, and the Rowlet Rowlets have used Magearna very well. It will be a very close battle, though, but I do see the Rowlet Rowlets coming up with a 3-0 victory over the Manchester Gliscor. And then we move on to the losers bracket, round 1. We have the Groningen Slokings versus the Manchester Gliscor. Now, I actually think that the Manchester Gliscor won that battle against the Slokings, but I do feel like the Slokings will come up with another victory, or not another one. They will come up with a victory over the Manchester Gliscor. I just don't see the Slokings getting knocked out of the playoffs right away. It doesn't seem likely. So I do see the Slokings coming up with a victory over the Manchester Gliscor. I think the Slokings will come up with a 3-0 victory over the Gliscors. And then we move on to the winners round 1 between the Toronto Weeballs and the Rowlet Rowlets. For this battle, the Toronto Weeballs won in the main season against the Rowlet Rowlets. I think it was a 2-0 or a 3-0 victory for them. But for their rematch in the playoffs, I do see the Rowlet Rowlets coming up with a victory here. I see them coming up with a 2-0 victory. I think that's pretty likely for the Rowlet Rowlets. And then we move on to the losers bracket round 2. We have the Toronto Weeballs versus the Groningen Slokings. For this battle, I think the Groningen Slokings will come up with a victory. If history repeats itself again, the Toronto Weeballs will win the qualifier match, but then that means the Slokings will win the next match against the Weeballs, aka the losers bracket, second round. So I do see the Slokings facing off against the Weeballs in the losers bracket finals. And for that, I think the Slokings will come up with a 3-0 victory against the Weeballs, and then that would put the Rowlet Rowlets versus the Slokings in the Alpha Cup. And for that battle, now when these two teams faced in the main season, the Slokings came up with a 2-0 victory over the Rowlet Rowlets. Who I think will come up with a victory here? It's a very hard choice. Very, very, very hard choice. I see the Slokings coming with a victory just because I feel like the Slokings have a team that naturally counters the Rowlet Rowlets. It'll be a very, very good and intense battle, though. It's a toss-up who would win that one, but in my opinion, I think the Slokings would win that battle. Maybe, I'm going to say a 2-0 or 1-0 victory for the Slokings there. But yeah, those are my playoff predictions, what the scores will be, who will win what. Now let's move on to the team analyses. Now we're going to do an in-depth analysis of all the teams who are in the playoffs, how I think they'll do, their roster, what teams will have the most trouble against, etc., etc., etc. So we're going to start with the number 4 seed, being the Manchester Gliscor. This team, I don't think they're going to make to the finals. I think they're going to finish at the 3rd spot or 4th. I just don't see them making it to the finals. Reasons being is because the Gliscors, they're a team that if they lose a battle, they often crash after that. You can just look at their rematches. They lost a few matches and then they lost the ones following that except for their last week. But don't get me wrong, they have a very hard-hitting team, very threatening. Sly is a phenomenal battler. It's just that when they lose, they kind of just crash and die. But if they fix that and fix them not crashing when they lose a few games, then they're going to come up with a win in a few matches and possibly even be a finals team. But if they lose their qualifier match against the Rowlet Rowlets, I do think they're going to just follow up with a loss in the first round of the losers bracket. Yes, they do have the kill leader right now with Tapu Lele, but a lot of the teams have figured out a way to deal with that, specifically the playoff teams. But Tapu Lele alone won't be able to carry the Manchester Gliscors to victory. So once the opponents get rid of that, they should have no problem dealing with the team. But don't get me wrong, the Manchester Gliscor have very powerful Pokemon in the back waiting. They have Salamence, their Manitan, two of their hardest hitting Pokemon, great wall breakers. They picked up Umbreon and Skarmory over Mandibuzz, and I don't remember their last Pokemon, but those Pokemon I do feel like fit their team really well, and they should help boost them in playoffs. But they're definitely going to have a hard time dealing with the Rowlet Rowlets in the first round of playoffs, because Tapu Lele versus Magearna can naturally counter Tapu Lele, so there's not much that thing will be able to do against it, and Magearna can kind of give the Manchester Gliscor a lot of trouble. Scarfthorn Manitan should be able to deal with it though. Nidoqueen might be able to take a few hits from it, but other than that, I see him having a very hard time with Magearna. Togetic gets hurt by Thunderbolt. Skarmory Thunderbolt. He can Floor Cannon the Umbreon, and I think Magearna might be able to learn Psychic for Amoonguss, but that's questionable. But yeah, Manchester Gliscor is a very unique team in my opinion. Once they get winning though, they can be one of the most deadly teams in the league. But if, like I said, if they lose their first game, I don't see them winning a game after that. It's just history, I think, will repeat itself. And after they lose a game, they usually just kind of crash. After that, they're a team that doesn't really handle losses too well. They don't really bounce back from them. So a loss in the qualifiers of the playoffs will be very detrimental to them, because that could potentially cost them the entire playoffs. But if they win their first playoff game, it's going to give them a huge confidence boost, and that could definitely put them in the finals. But they're going to have a lot of trouble trying to get there, I feel like. Though once they get a win, they're one of the most deadly teams in the league to deal with. Sly's a phenomenal battler, but it's just a loss in the qualifiers I think will hurt them a lot, most likely costing them the entire playoff run for them. So, in all honesty, I think in the playoff run, this team will finish 0-2. I do see them losing their first qualifier match, and like I said, this team doesn't handle losses too well. They were projected to finish the league with a much higher win record, but they finished 9-5, which by all means is not bad at all, but they were seen to finish a lot better, possibly with only 3 losses or maybe 2, but instead finishing 9-5. There were a lot of upsets in the league, and he can't handle hacks too well, so if he get hacked out of his qualifier match, that could be really bad, because that could potentially even cost him his second playoff match in the losers bracket. But if this team does get a win, they're definitely could be a finals competitor here. They, like I said, very good team, very good battler Sly is, but I just feel like a loss in the qualifiers will hurt them very much. But if he proves me wrong, I don't know. I'll be honored, I guess. But yeah. We moved on to the number 3 spot, being the Toronto Weavals. Now, this team is a very interesting team. The biggest problem to the Toronto Weavals is that they can be a very inconsistent team. Inconsistency for them is their biggest weakness. This team on a good day can be one of the most deadly teams in the league. They have one of the best defensive teams. One of the kill leaders being Hoop Unbound, and I feel like they used Hoop Unbound really useful. But if this is another team where losses can hurt them a lot, but they have shown to bounce back from losses. Losses don't really affect them too much. But, like I said, inconsistency is this team's biggest weakness. If they have a bad day, in the qualifiers, they'll knock them down the losers bracket. And if they have another bad day in the losers bracket, that will cost them the playoffs. But this team is, on a good day, is a potential finals competitor. I do feel like they'll finish at the number 3 spot in the playoffs, but it'll be interesting to see how they do. They finished 10-4 in the main season, which I think that's where a lot of people predicting them to finish. Maybe 11-3, but 10-4, that's not by all means a good record. By all means, that is not a bad record to finish at, but everyone predicted them to finish around there, I feel like. But the Toronto Weavils, they have a lot of Pokemon that their coach really knows how to use, but the problem is with them is that a lot of the other teams in the playoffs just have a lot more battling experience than them, and that can oftentimes cause them to lose a game. And like I said, inconsistency for them is one of the biggest weaknesses to this team. If this team fixed their inconsistency problem, they would definitely be a top-tier team, finals competitor. They did make it to the finals last season, so who knows? Maybe they can make it to the finals again this season. It's definitely an option for them, but I just feel like them having to deal with a lot of the other teams in the playoffs is going to be very difficult for them to maneuver around. They beat, in the main season, the only playoff team they beat were the Rowlets. They lost to the Slokings and the Manchester Gliscor. Very close match, though, between the Manchester Gliscor. Like I said, very back and forth in that battle between them. But the Toronto Weavils, like I said, they have a very defensive team, one of the best defensive teams in the game, with Mega Venusaur, Gramble, Zapdos, Jirachi, Milotic. And then they also have one of the most offensive presence in the league, being Hoopa Unbound. Hoopa Unbound has been tearing up the league. It has 18 kills, I believe. But the same thing with Tapu Lele. Hoopa Unbound cannot carry the Weavils to victory. And if the opponents know how to deal with it, then Hoopa will not be much use to the Weavils. But they also do have big threats like Diggersby, Haxorus, Conkeldurr, Volcarona. All those Pokemon can be very hard hitters. But, like I said, inconsistency is this team's biggest problem. If they're having a bad day in the playoffs, then that's going to cost them the entire playoff run, I believe. But this team, I think they'll finish at the number 4, 3, or 2 spot. I don't see them getting the number 1 spot. It's certainly possible, but the playoff span is about 4 weeks, and the Toronto Weavils are bound to have an inconsistent week in one of those battles, and it could potentially be the battle to knock them out of playoffs. But if they find a way to fix that inconsistency and play really good in their playoff games, then this team can definitely make the finals. And then moving on to the team that finished the number 2 spot, we had the Season 1 champion, the Grunnigan Slokings. Your defending champions are back for playoffs. The Slokings are a very deadly team because, one thing, Nathan is a very unpredictable battler. They finished 11-3. Not really what I think people expected them to finish at. I think people actually expected them to finish a little bit lower because they have a very difficult team, but Nathan managed to make this team work phenomenally. A lot of teams look at his team and they're like, this team doesn't look that good. But then you look at Nathan's record, he's like, how is he doing this well with this team? It's because Nathan arguably is one of the best battlers in the league, even better than the number 1 seed. It's just, he's a very unpredictable battler, which is what makes him so good. And he knows how to use every single one of the Pokemon in his roster. He's a lot of big threats: Landorus, Bisharp, Bulu, Latios, Suicune, very defensive Pokemon. This team is a very, very hard team to take down. It's pretty weak to fire, though, but Nathan managed to fix that, and fire types really aren't a problem for him now. But yeah, any team that Nathan forms is going to be the team to beat. The Grunnigan Slokings are the team to beat in the ABL. Because they're the Season 1 champions, people want to be able to knock them out and be able to say that, hey, we beat the Season 1 champions. But the Slokings, I see them doing very well in the league. I do see them making finals. If not, they'll finish at the number 2 seed. I feel like if they get knocked down to the losers bracket, they're definitely going to win it back in the finals, making it back up to the losers bracket. But this is a very good battler. Nathan knows what he's doing very well, and he knows how he can get the win, what to do. He's very good at prepping, which is what made him go 11-3. As the teams that might give him problems, the Rowlets will definitely give him a problem, and the Manchester Gliscor will. The Toronto Weavals, it's a toss-up of how well they'll do against the Slow Kings, because like I said, if history repeats itself, then the Toronto Weavals will win against the Slow Kings, but if not, the Slow Kings will potentially mop the floor with the Weavals, in my opinion. They're a team, though, that is known for putting up a lot of points and winning by like 3-0, 4-0, 5-0, 6-0 against their opponents, so they're used to doing that, and that could definitely help them in the playoffs. Will they become Season 2 champion is the question. I think it is a 70% chance for the Slow Kings to become Season 2 champions again. Get another Alpha Cup under their belt. It's very likely they can win it all. They did it last season. They performed very well last season. And they performed phenomenally this season as well, especially with the team they have. Nathan certainly exceeded the expectations of a lot of people in the league by finishing 11-3. Like I said, he did not finish as well as he did last season, but the competition this season was also a lot more fierce and competitive. But Nathan, even with all the competition, he has come up with wins countless times. He beat all the playoff teams except the Manchester Gliscor, but I do see him beating them the second time if they face off in playoffs. But yeah, they have a very difficult team to maneuver around. A lot of bulk and a lot of offense on that team. He has bulky Pokemon like Suicune, Magneton can be bulky, Jellicent, Cryogonal's a good special wall, but he also has really good wall breakers being Bulu, Landorus, Bisharp, and Latios, and then some like other stuff mixed in the middle. Salazzle could be a setup sweeper, Moltres is a great Scarfmon, Tangrowth, bulky, Superior can also be a good setup mon, but for Slow Kings, I do see them performing very well in playoffs. I don't really see them losing any matches. Potentially they could lose against the Rowlets. If there's a match they lose, I feel like it would be in the finals. I don't see them getting knocked down to the losers bracket at all. But like I said, if history does repeat itself and the Toronto Weavals do come up with a win in the qualifiers, then Slow Kings could potentially be in the losers bracket. But yeah, that's how I think the Slow Kings will finish their season in the playoffs. Probably, most likely, like I said, 70% chance for them to become Season 2 champions. Then we move on to the number 1 seed, the Rowlets. This team was a very dynamite team in the main season. Very hard to take down. Their only losses in the league were against the Slow Kings and the Weavals. The Rowlets, they have a very good team. They have 2 extremely good wall breakers on their squad, being Mega Medicham and Magearna, both special and physical wall breakers. Magearna has been such a deadly force in the league. He's used it extraordinary. It has about 19 or 18 kills under his belt. But like the same deal with Hoopa and Tapu Lele, Magearna won't be able to take the Rowlets to victory. But he used all of his Pokemon so far phenomenally. I think he's used all of his Pokemon equally except Dusknoir and Taurus. But every others, they've been brought to multiple battles, more than one. But a very good team. Mimikyu, their coach, is a very good battler. He knows what he's doing, which is why he finished 12-2. They nearly went undefeated, but then they lost to the Slow Kings in week 8. But Rowlets, they were the team to beat this season. If you beat this team, you were considered one of the best teams in the ABL. How they will do in playoffs, it's a toss-up sort of. They lost to both the Weavals and the Slow Kings, but I do feel like they could beat them the second time around. They are certainly a final spot. I don't see them finishing at the 3rd or 4th spot. They're definitely a 1 or number 2 seed. Definitely, I do see them making it in the finals. I think, like the Slow Kings, I think there is about a 70... No, I think there's about an 80% chance for the Routes to become Season 2 champions. They just have such a diverse team. It's a really good team. He has a lot of threats on there. Mega Medicham, Magearna, Azelf, Staraptor, Necrozema, Delmise, Infernape, Shaman. Very good team. Very hard to take down. If you don't bring something to take down his big wall breakers, then you just can't win against him. Very difficult to move around to see. But I do see them finishing at the number 1 or number 2 seed. I don't think that they would get knocked down to the losers bracket at all. In the qualifier match, I do see them winning against the Manchester Glysker. They beat them both times in the main season, so I don't see how or why they wouldn't be able to do it again in the playoffs, but who knows. As a match against the Slow Kings, that could be a very difficult match for them to deal with. I do see them coming up with a win, though. But if they do get a win against the Slow Kings, it will not be easy at all. And it's very hard to choose who could win between the Routes and the Renegade Slow Kings. Both very good battlers, very good teams on both sides. Like I said, the Routes probably will finish at the number 1 or number 2 seed. Other than that, there's not really much to say about the Routes. They're such a good team. They're going to be so hard to take down. Definitely a finals competitor, without a doubt. I don't see them getting knocked to the losers bracket at all. If they do, it'll probably most likely be against the Slow Kings. But, yeah. Those are my predictions for playoffs. I try not to stay as biased as I could. But the final predictions for me, I see Rowlett finishing at the number 1 spot, Slow Kings number 2, Weavils number 3, and the Manchester Glysker number 4. That's what I see. But the Slow Kings could definitely become at the number 1 spot, and the Rowlett number 2. But we'll see what will happen. Playoff, all the teams in playoffs are very good battlers. Anything can happen. These are just my predictions. If you have other predictions, then make sure you say them what will be in the comments down below. But yeah, I think that's it. If you guys enjoyed this, then make sure to hit the like button down below. My name is Levitee here. I'm going to get the heck out of here. If you guys are a fan of the ABL, make sure to subscribe. And if the finals are between 2 teams who do not record, they will be uploaded onto here eventually. But yeah, I'm going to get the heck out of here. See you guys later.